Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is portfolio questions. The first portfolio is Deputy First Minister Responsibilities, Economy and Gaelic. And remind members that questions 3 and 4 are grouped together, so I'll take any supplementaries on those questions after the initial questions have been asked. There is an awful lot of interest in supplementaries. I don't expect to be able to get through all of them, but I will require brevity in questions and responses to get through as many as I can. Question number 1 is not lodged. Question 2, Tim Eagle.
To ask the Scottish Government what steps it will take to monitor the impact of the Visitor Levy Scotland Act 2024 on small and medium-sized businesses in the local authority areas that apply it.
Minister Ivan McKee.
Council's planning to introduce a visitor levy are required to establish a visitor levy forum with membership from businesses to provide views on the scheme. In addition, the Scottish Government has been liaising with Visit Scotland on re-establishing the expert working group. This will provide a national forum for business and stakeholders to reflect their views and advise on approaches to handling implementation. The Scottish Government will conduct a full review of the operation of the Visitor Levy Act within 3 years of the introduction of the first scheme.
Tim Eagle.
Well, let me just give you a few brief samples of the many emails I've received on this. This levy will decimate campsites in the Highland region. We are already trying to compete with free and we are losing. Motorhomes are parking up in every lay-by and car parks that you can imagine, sometimes right outside the gates of a campsite. The proposed implementation of the Visitor Levy in Scotland is a complex, burdensome, discriminatory and without precedent in Europe. It will potentially push small businesses above the VAT threshold. Presiding officer, constituents of mine and actually the Deputy First Ministers are really concerned by this, and I'm not actually even trying to be political. The levy is genuinely scaring small businesses vital to ours and other regions. Would the Deputy First Minister commit to both looking again at the form of the levy, what it encompasses, and speak with councils about a potential pause on introduction while that happens?
Minister.
Thank you very much. I'm not obviously the Deputy First Minister, but I shall answer the question as best I can from my lowly position. Of course, the responsibility for the implementation and taking forward the consultation, of course, lies with the local councils, in this case Highland Council, and I would encourage the member and indeed all the businesses that have engaged with them and others to engage with that consultation process as it proceeds. We absolutely recognise the importance of business input to the implementation of the levy in each council area and the input they can make as to how those funds are taken forward to better the local area for the use indeed of visitors, to make those localities more attractive for visitors to come forward and support those businesses. Obviously, this form of visitor levy is something that's in place in the majority of EU countries, so it's not something that's unusual. And of course, we'll continue to engage with businesses through the Visit Scotland and other channels to take on board the points that he's made.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Raising revenue through a visitor levy does have a potential to be transformative, particularly in high-traffic tourist destinations, and placing the powers in the hands of local councils ensures no region is disadvantaged in a one-size-fits-all approach. Can the Minister say more about how the decision to empower local government could benefit communities and businesses across Scotland?
Briefly as possible, Minister.
A visitor levy can help support Scotland as a tourist destination. It gives councils the opportunity to invest funds in visitor-related facilities, expanding and enhancing the appeal of their local areas. It can provide support for local infrastructure and the maintenance of public spaces, delivering benefits for both residents and visitors. And by empowering local authorities in this way, it can help deliver improvement that strengthen communities and enrich the visitor experience. And of course, we also recognise the importance of engaging with businesses at a local level to make sure that the levy delivers on its aspirations.
Briefly, Beatrice Wishart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. With each council area devising their own visitor levy scheme, there is no universal assurance that patients from island and rural areas who require overnight accommodation to access healthcare and treatment out with their home areas will not be impacted by the levy. So what will the Scottish Government do to ensure island patients are not penalised when attending mainland hospitals?
Minister.
I know this is an issue that Beatrice Wishart has raised previously and written in on and had some response on, and I recognise the issue that she brings forward. Of course, the operation, as I said, of the levy working within the confines of the Act is, of course, for local authorities to take forward and consider each of the issues raised in that regard at a local level.
Thank you. Question 3, Graham Simpson.
To ask the Scottish Government when it last met with the board of Ferguson Marine and what was discussed.
Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes.
The Scottish Government met with the Ferguson Marine Board on the 30th of January. Updates were given by the Chief Executive and the CFO, and there were discussions about the yard's future strategy and business operations.
Graham Simpson.
Well, can I thank the Deputy First Minister for that answer? No doubt at that meeting the progress of the Glen Sannox and the Glen Rosa would have been discussed. And the Public Audit Committee heard this morning that there could be delays to the Glen Rosa and extra costs. Quite alarming. I've subsequently been told by a source that that delay could be until April. Does that chime with what the Deputy First Minister understands? Would she regard April as an acceptable delay? And what would be a reasonable extra cost in her view?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, I'm afraid I don't operate on the basis of sources. I operate on the basis of the letters that are sent to the Net Zero Energy and Transport Committee as updates on progress that is being made. And as the member will know, those letters address matters around timetabling and around matters related to cost. As he knows, with the Glen Rosa, now the primary focus of the yard, all of the workforce are focused on delivering that vessel.
And question 4, Edward Mountain.
Sorry, point of order, Presiding Officer.
Point of order, Edward Mountain.
Thank you. The Deputy First Minister just referred to letters that should be sent to the Net Zero Energy and Transport Committee. I'd like it noted on the record that the letter that was due at the end of January has not yet been received, and nor has there been reason given why it was late. On a point of order, Presiding Officer.
Okay, it's not a point of order. Question 4, Edward Mountain.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government what the total monthly running cost of Ferguson Marine is.
Deputy First Minister.
The running costs are a commercial matter for Ferguson Marine to answer. Monthly charges to the Scottish Government fluctuate based on the work undertaken under current contracts.
Edward Mountain.
Well, let me help the Deputy First Minister in answering that question. The actual annual, so the under-recovery on a monthly basis, as quoted by Ferguson Marine, is £1 million per calendar month. And what was being suggested is that it costs £20 million a year to run Ferguson Marine if there is no recovery of any works. That's £84,000 per job. How will the Scottish Government fund that if they don't give the small vessels contract to Ferguson Marine?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, I hope the member is not recommending that we break procurement law. Obviously, the yard is in the tendering for new vessels, and that will be managed as it should according to procurement law. The number that the member quotes, if I understand correctly, covers all employment at the yard, plus overheads and central administration costs. He can maybe clarify that. Now that the Glen Sannox has been completed, the bulk of the workforce at Ferguson Marine is working on the delivery of the Glen Rosa, and these are therefore recoverable costs.
Okay, I've got a lot of supplementaries here. I won't get through all of them. I'll get through as many as I can. First, Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, does the Deputy First Minister agree with me that the Scottish Government's £14.2 million investment, but as we heard this morning in the Audit Committee, £9 million of that is for the budget year of next year? Does the Deputy First Minister agree that that actually would be a significant step in actually helping develop the yard, but also help develop the yard so it can secure both public and also commercial contracts?
Deputy First Minister.
Investment of £14.2 million is over 2 years. That would support a range of initiatives to improve productivity and to help give the shipyard the best possible opportunity to bid for and secure new work.
Thank you. Call Neil Bibby.
Securing future work is key to securing the future of the Ferguson's Yard. Board papers from May last year say they got positive legal advice on a direct award for the small vessel replacement programme. The GMB union would like to know what the Scottish Government's reaction was to this advice and why the Government did not act upon it. And if Ferguson Marine doesn't get the award of this contract in the first round, will the direct award still be considered for the second round?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, as I said in my answer to Edward Mountain, there is a live procurement process underway, and it would not be appropriate for me to comment on that procurement process. That needs to go down the road that is there and is understood. In terms of future work, the Scottish Government has set out an approach to future work, and the Transport Secretary will update Parliament on tendering and procuring the second phase of the small vessel replacement programme boats.
Very briefly, Paul Sweeney.
Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that it's essential for the demand signal from public sector procurement to underpin Scottish shipbuilding, and looking to achieve that, could the Cabinet Secretary look at emulating what the Australians have done with the Australian Marine Complex in Perth, which is set up as a common user facility, which means regardless of who wins public procurement contracts, they can use that infrastructure and that facility in Australia to deliver the programmes?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, we are working with the Ferguson Marine Yard to focus right now on improving productivity and investing in the equipment and the machinery that needs updated in order to enable them to compete internationally for procurement work. And that is irrespective of what ends up happening in terms of ownership of the yard. Our commitment is to continue to invest in it as a shipbuilding facility, and the first step is making sure that it can compete on an international basis.
Thank you. Question 5, Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it is working to increase investment in Scotland's artificial intelligence sector.
Minister Richard Lockhead.
The Scottish Government is working with our enterprise agencies to promote investment and growth in our tech and AI ecosystems. They help AI companies at all stages of growth and facilitate collaboration between AI companies and academic institutions and other partners to support knowledge exchange and innovation as well. And we're working closely with partners across the private and public sectors, including the Data Lab and the National Robotharium, to maximise the impact of our programmes and help the AI sector flourish. And we also continue to support the economic opportunities for AI through the AI Alliance, which is our delivery body for our AI strategy.
Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you. Thank the Minister for the answer. The release of Chinese AI DeepSeek shows how quickly the artificial intelligence sector is moving and how important it is we support investment in Scotland. The Prime Minister recently announced AI Growth Zone to accelerate growth and innovation in the sector and said Scotland had a great potential to be designated. Would the Minister welcome a Scottish AI growth zone, and will they discuss it with the UK Government?
Minister.
I thank the member for raising this very, very important issue. I actually raised the issues that he's just raised with me with the Secretary of State in the UK Government, Peter Kyle, during a phone call prior to the Prime Minister's announcement, which I have to say was a bit disappointing, given he spoke about the AI strengths throughout the UK. But when I say throughout the UK, he stopped at the border and didn't mention any of the strengths in Scotland, and that was a great pity, because Scotland does lead the world in some aspects of AI, according to many commentators. Therefore, we need the UK AI strategy to support Scotland. We need UK Secretary of State to stop talking up the Golden Triangle of London, Oxford and Cambridge, which they're doing at the moment, and calling that the home of innovation. So I am pursuing those priorities.
A couple of supplementaries. First, Emma Roddick.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Last year I secured a members' debate which gave MSPs the chance to discuss the rapid evolution and potential of artificial intelligence. I firmly believe that we have a duty to assess risks and protect society and vulnerable individuals from harm by taking swift action to regulate the reach and use of AI. In light of this, can I ask what the Government is doing to ensure that, whilst embracing the positives of AI, it is also keeping a close eye on the developing dangers?
Minister.
Thank you. The member raises very important issues, and of course Our AI strategy in Scotland is built on the premise of delivering trustworthy, ethical and inclusive AI for the people of Scotland. And whilst the regulation is reserved to the UK Government in relation to many of the points the member raises, we are taking a lot of steps in Scotland to try and promote the appropriate use of AI, and the AI Alliance has a number of programmes like Living with AI, the AI Playbook and the Children and AI Project, which are pursuing the aims that the member has mentioned.
And Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Funding for an AI supercomputer at Edinburgh University was pulled by the Labour Government, and that's been followed by announcements that they would be investing in AI in projects elsewhere, including in Oxford and Cambridge, as the Minister has said. Given that the Labour Government now seems to avoid investing in Scotland, what discussions has the Minister and his colleagues had with the Labour Government on this issue? And can he say any more about how the Scottish Government is working to grow the tech industry here?
Minister.
The member again raises some important issues which I understand the Labour bench is muttering away don't like being aired in this chamber. But there are some, of course, important points made. It is really important there's an AI growth zone announced shortly for Scotland. The first one's not going to be in Scotland, but we want one in Scotland as soon as possible through the UK Government's new AI Action Plan. Again, that's an issue I raised with Peter Kyle. I also raised the issue over the supercomputer, the exascale computer for Edinburgh, which was cancelled or postponed perhaps, and the fact that we now have a window of opportunity to revisit that issue through the AI Action Plan. Ongoing discussions will be taking place between the University of Edinburgh and the UK Government on that, and we will lend our support to the University of Edinburgh and Scotland in terms of trying to secure that as quickly as possible for Scotland. And it's really important that the UK Government recognise Scotland's strengths and stop talking up only Oxford, Cambridge and London, which is what they're doing at the moment. We have to face up to that reality, so let's pursue that.
Thank you, Minister. And I would discourage from benches from providing a running commentary. Question 6, Emma Harper.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it has carried out an assessment of the economic impact on Dumfries and Galloway and the Scottish borders of the South Scotland Enterprise Agency since its inception in 2019.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, the South of Scotland Enterprise has delivered tangible benefits for businesses and communities in the South. Last year, it invested £13.7 million in business and community enterprises and £5.7 million in 48 strategic projects, including the Chapel Cross Energy Transition Zone and the Borders Innovation Park. It helped to create or safeguard over 1,700 jobs, and it worked with over 1,400 entrepreneurs and led the first Pathways pilot to help underrepresented founders to start their own business.
Emma Harper.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. It's clear that SOCI has made an important impact across Dumfries and Galloway and the borders, with teams working hard to support and grow local businesses as well as supporting communities. Can the Deputy First Minister comment on conversations regarding projects that will attract business and particularly young people to the region to grow the local economy?
The First Minister.
Of exciting projects in development across the South, which provides opportunities for young people. The South of Scotland Enterprise is delivering a pioneering Pathways project to support young entrepreneurs to bring their business visions to life through coaching, advice and financial support. And their Youth Advisory Forum ensures that the voices of young people are heard and they're involved in finding solutions to the barriers that they face. And of course, South of Scotland Enterprise works closely with business, Borders College, Dumfries and Galloway College and the SRUC to design curriculum choices that target growth sectors.
Brief supplementary, Colin Smith.
Thank you, President Officer. The budget for South of Scotland Enterprise Agency has been cut from £35 million in 2023-24 to a proposed £29 million for the forthcoming year. What effect will having £6 million less to invest than 2 years ago have on that economic impact of the agency?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, both the resource funding and the capital funding allocated to South Scotland Enterprise in 2025-26 reflect an increase in funding compared to 2024 and 2025 due to the reduction in the financial transactions allocated to the Scottish Government by the UK Government. We've not been able to maintain South of Scotland Enterprise financial transactions allocation, and that accounts for most of the difference in funding between 2022-2023 and 2025-2026.
Further supplementary, Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. As Colin Smith says, what we're seeing is a 15% cut in the funding to SOCI from last year to what's in the Scottish Government's budget for the year ahead. If it's such a valuable organisation, why is its funding being cut?
Deputy First Minister.
Presiding Officer, it's starting to sound a little bit like Groundhog Day on these questions, because we have written to Murdo Fraser. I'm happy to write to him once again to outline the fact that he is not comparing like with like, and I've set out in my answer to Colin Smith that both the resource funding and the capital funding allocated to the South of Scotland Enterprise in 2025 to 26 reflects an increase in funding compared to 2024 and 2025. My ambition is that the enterprise agencies focus more on what they're able to distribute rather than in expanding it themselves, because the role of enterprise agencies is to be the front line of supporting industry and business. Thanks.
And question number 7, Ben Macpherson.
To ask the Scottish Government what discussions the Economy Secretary has had with ministerial colleagues regarding establishing a standalone postgraduate business school to help create more companies, attract talent and boost innovation.
Minister Richard Lockhead.
Scotland is already home to world-class institutions, and as outlined in our National Innovation Strategy, we are committed to maximising the economic impact of university research through commercialisation and the creation and scaling up of start-ups and spin-out companies and so on. But there are no current plans to establish a standalone postgraduate business school. However, we are focused on working with our universities to make Scotland a world-leading entrepreneurial nation.
Ben Macpherson.
I thank the Minister for that answer and agree with everything that he said. In some recent engagements with entrepreneurs, we discussed how Scotland is very innovative, and current business schools within universities like the University of Edinburgh are of course very good. But could we build on this potentially and benefit from an additional internationally prestigious postgraduate-only establishment similar to INSEAD in France or the London Business School, to help further develop Scotland's remarkable economic potential in the 21st century? And would the Scottish Government be open to further engagement on this proposal?
Minister.
Just to say to Ben Macpherson, I think it's really important we are ambitious, and whilst we have no current plans to do that, I would be absolutely happy to have further engagement on this, both with Ben Macpherson and indeed the university sector as appropriate, and would be happy to have further discussions with them on that.
A couple of brief supplementaries. First, Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Investment in higher education and business is critical to attracting and retaining the best talent needed to help deliver economic growth. However, the IFS reported a large-scale real terms decrease in funding provided to Scottish universities, and there are real concerns that this investment has not been prioritised. So how realistic are plans to establish a standalone business school, Minister?
Minister.
Well, as I said, there are currently no plans to establish a standalone business school, albeit I'm very happy to explore whether that is an option going forward for Scotland. I would say, of course, speaking to university and research sectors in Scotland, as I regularly do, one of the biggest barriers, of course, is the immigration regulations and the bureaucracy involved in getting academics and appropriate staff into the country, and that's something, of course, we should be conscious of as well. But the budget, meantime, includes over £1.1 billion in investment in teaching and research in Scotland's universities.
And briefly, Daniel Johnson.
Is the issue not that our business schools are trying to compete with one another, and as a result, none of them are inside the top 50 in the QS rankings? Should we not be asking our business schools to collaborate, particularly on areas of expertise such as renewables or food and drink or financial services?
Minister.
I have a lot of sympathy for the point the member makes, and I think we have seen a lot more collaboration amongst our universities in recent years, and that was something I certainly promoted as Universities Minister a few years ago. That has been paying dividends, so if there is scope for further collaboration between our business schools to achieve further international status, that is something I think they should be exploring, and certainly something I'd be interested in finding out more about.
Thank you. And question 8, Sandesh Gulhani.
To ask the Scottish Government what it is doing to support and grow the nighttime economy in Glasgow.
Minister Tom Arthur.
The nighttime economy is vital to Glasgow's prosperity. We continue to do everything we can to support hospitality businesses to thrive. We are offering 40% relief, capped at £110,000 per business, for hospitality premises, as well as music venues with a capacity of up to 1,500, but are eligible for the basic property rate. Around half of properties in the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors will continue to be eligible for 100% small business bonus scheme relief. We're also supporting the sector through the Tourism and Hospitality Industry Leadership Group and the New Deal for Business.
Sandesh Gulhani.
Glasgow's nighttime economy generates £2.16 billion annually and supports 16,600 jobs. Yet pubs are closing at twice the rate of England, and nightclubs have declined by 35% in 4 years. Businesses are struggling due to reduced transport options, prohibitive rail costs, LEZ taxi restrictions and extended parking costs. And the 40% rate relief the Minister speaks about will help a few, but I'm concerned that most of Glasgow's nighttime economy venues will miss out. To quote the SLTA, the move will catch headlines, but will do little to stop closures and significant job losses in the sector. Given these challenges, will the Minister outline what measures he will do to revive Glasgow's nighttime economy?
Minister.
Well, I'm conscious of the priority that is placed upon the nighttime economy, not just by members in this chamber, but of course by Glasgow City Council. And of course there are a range of factors that have impacted nighttime economy industries, not just in Glasgow, but across Scotland and indeed the wider UK, stemming from the pandemic, the cost of living crisis, increased energy costs, the forthcoming increase in employer national insurers' contributions. We are committed to working constructively with our local authorities to ensure that the nighttime economy can prosper in all parts of Scotland. And indeed that is why we have provided that support through specific targeted hospitality relief in the non-domestic rate system, and that sits in the context of a suite of a number of interventions, short, medium and long term, to help support the viability and prosperity of our city centres from which the nighttime industries derive their potential.
Thank you. A very brief supplementary, Claire Haughey.
Does the Minister share my concerns that the Labour Government's oversight of increasing, not decreasing energy bills as we were promised, and changes to employer national insurance contributions are placing vast cost and workforce pressures on businesses in the nighttime economy in and around Glasgow?
As briefly as possible, Minister.
The members that Ms Hawkey raises are ones which are echoed by numerous businesses that I engage with, not just in hospitality but more widely. In running for office, the Labour Party said that energy costs would fall. Energy costs have increased. In running for office, the Labour Party said they would not increase national insurance. They are increasing national insurance employer contributions. This is having a negative effect upon the wider economy, and it is something which will clearly have an impact upon the nighttime industries. But as I said, the Scottish Government is committed to supporting our nighttime industries and will continue to do so.
Thank you very much, and apologies to those that I wasn't able to call. We move on to the next portfolio, which is finance and local government. Again, members wishing to ask a supplementary should press the request to speak buttons during the relevant question. And I call question number 1, Fulton McGregor.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions the Finance Secretary has had with ministerial colleagues regarding infrastructure investment plans for the building of new schools in light of the recent Audit Scotland report, which noted that further borrowing will be needed to invest in these.
Mr Ivan McKee.
The Cabinet Secretary for Finance and Local Government continues to discuss with Scottish ministers the issues affecting local government. Although it's the statutory responsibility of local authorities to manage their school estate, the Scottish Government will continue to provide them with significant funding support through the £2 billion Learning Estate Investment Programme. This programme will deliver modern, state-of-the-art learning environments and benefit tens of thousands of pupils across Scotland.
Fulton McGregor.
I thank the Minister for the response. My constituency has certainly benefited gratefully from this Government's investment in schools over recent years, with some fantastic examples of new builds across Coatbridge and Christen, including the very recently opened Riverbank Primary School and Christen Primary School. However, there are still areas where the Council has no plans for new schools. One of these is in the village of Moodiesburn, where the community strongly feel there is an urgent need for new school buildings and the associated community facilities, and many constituents have now raised this with me. Can I therefore ask the Minister what more can be done to ensure North Lanarkshire Council are able to bring all schools in the area up to the same modern standard, including in places such as Moodiesburn?
Minister.
As the member rightly points out, the Scottish Government have already provided North Lanarkshire Council with significant funding support towards the delivery of new schools, even though it is a statutory duty of local authorities to manage their school estate. The proportion of Scottish schools in good or satisfactory condition has increased from 62% in 2007 to 91% in 2024, and we have committed to working with COSLA, local authorities and Scottish Futures Trust to explore how we can deliver further improvements in the school estate across Scotland.
Thank you. Supplementary, Katie Clark.
The new Ardrossan Academy was originally estimated to cost £31.5 million, but by last year's budget that had more than doubled to £75 million. What more can be done to support councils who are having to meet the soaring construction costs required for new projects? And how is that taken into account in budget allocation? Minister.
I've already made clear the Scottish Government continues to support local authorities through the £2 billion LEAP programme and will continue to do so. Clearly, construction inflation is something that's impacting us all, not helped, frankly, by Brexit and a range of other factors, but the Scottish Government will continue to work with local authorities to do what we can to support them to continue to improve on that substantial improvement we've seen over the last number of years in the condition of the school estate across Scotland.
Thank you. Question 2, Carol Mochan, who joins us remotely.
To ask the Scottish Government what it will do to address any difficulties with recruitment and retention in local government due to the reported declining value of pay. Minister.
The Scottish Government values the contribution of local government workers. This is why we provided £77.5 million of additional funding in 2024-25 to support local government, make a pay offer that protected the value of pay for those on the lowest incomes by providing an uplift of 5.63%. The offer was better than that made elsewhere in the UK, and additional funding is baselined in the 2025-26 budget. Although decisions on pay for local government as the employers, the Scottish Government will continue to engage with COSLA regarding recruitment and retention, wider workforce planning and pay.
Carol Mochan.
I thank the Minister for that answer. The value of pay for local government workers has been declining for many years. Over the last year, mortgage interest payments have increased by 17.6%. Average two-bedroom rents are up by 6.2%. Yet local government workers are expected to get by on a pay increase well below this level. So I ask the Minister, would you apply for a job where the value of your pay is almost certain to decrease every single year?
Through the chair always, Minister.
Well, as I remember, restrictions on the back benches, ministers haven't taken a pay increase for 18 years. But with regards to the member-specific question, I absolutely recognise the point she's making, but that's why the Scottish Government, as I say, provided that additional £77.5 million for additional funding last year to support local government, and why that resulted in an uplift of 5.63% for the lowest paid workers. And again, I reiterate, that's a better offer than was made elsewhere in the UK. And additional funding is baselined in the forthcoming year's budget, and it was at the request of the unions. The successive pay deals have prioritised the lowest paid local government workers.
And supplementary, Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can the Minister confirm that Scotland's average public sector pay is £2,300 a year higher than in the rest of the UK, amounting to an additional £1.3 billion, much of it going to local government workers, and that Scotland's lowest paid local government employees not only have the UK's highest basic pay, but are liable for lower income tax and council tax, and will therefore encourage his Labour counterparts in England and Wales to match Scotland's local government rates of pay?
Minister.
Thank you for pointing out these facts, and I'm proud of the pay deals that give Scotland's public sector workers, our nurses, teachers and others higher salaries than in the rest of the UK. The First Minister and COSLA President wrote to the Chancellor at the start of January calling on the UK Government to fully fund the costs of all public service providers in Scotland. And yesterday, the Finance Secretary announced an additional £144 million for local government, the equivalent to the net revenue raised nationally by a 5% increase in council tax to help councils avoid inflation busting council tax rises. We now need the UK Labour Government to step up and provide full funding to avoid councils having to make hard choices to impose a tax that goes straight to the Treasury coffers when they set their own budgets later this month.
Question 3, Bob Doris.
Thank you, President Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will consider reviewing the planning guidance provided to local authorities relating to issuing a call for ideas and sites when undertaking the statutory requirement to prepare a 10-year local development plan.
Mr.
Local planning development guidance published in May 2023 advises planning authorities on using an optional call for sites or ideas when preparing their local development plans. This is one of several ways in which people and communities can have their say. Further advice on this is set out in our December 2024 Effective Community Engagement and Local Development Plans guidance. Planning authorities are responsible for preparing local development plans, including gathering information needed to support decisions on future development. And the Scottish Government are monitoring the progress of new-style local development plans and will consider updating the guidance if experience suggests this would be appropriate.
Bob Doris.
I thank the Minister for that answer. The Scottish Government Local Development Plan guidance includes a reference to a call for ideas or sites by councils, including for development sites or types of development such as housing. In practice, landowners and developers are given an early opportunity to influence the development of a plan. For instance, a potential developer has used a call for sites for a large-scale housing development on a greenbelt site at Blackhill Road in Summerston in my constituency, previously rejected for some very good reasons. Can I ask the Scottish Government to consider how guidance could be improved to give a greater voice for communities at this earliest of stages? For instance, I know many of my constituents want to see local brownfield sites developed and greenbelt protectees, as they would wish the development plan to reflect that very thing.
Minister.
The guidance expects that the call for ideas would be open to everyone to propose ideas for any aspects of a plan, and this is not limited to suggestions for development sites or types of development. Our guidance on effective community engagement and local development planning, published in December of last year, outlines all the opportunities for individuals to have a say in local development plans. Local place plans can also be used by communities to outline their aspirations for the future development of their place and must be taken into account in local development plans. And I would encourage the member to look into that, and I'm happy to engage with them on the detail of that approach.
Supplementary, Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Would the Minister agree with me that, despite all that, the planning system in Scotland remains fundamentally discretionary, and that can often introduce conflicts in the planning process when plans are just presented and developer-led? What is an interesting benchmark with the German system, which is more codified, and it means that people know well in advance what the preferred styles are, the preferred densities are, etc. And that can introduce a less contentious system, and it gives greater certainty for developers to invest because they know what they can build out and where.
Minister.
I thank the member for that question. Certainly, in terms of NPF4, one of the drivers behind the move to that revised planning system has been for it to be plan-led as much as possible, and we've seen that has encouraging developers to focus on the land that's been identified in local development plans developed through the process we've outlined to make sure that it's plan-led and we're not having as many applications that are outside the plan. But in terms of the specifics that the member raises, I'm very happy to engage with him to see if there's opportunities there for us to further develop the plan-led system to give more of the clarity that he outlines in his question.
Question 4, Annabel Ewing.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions the Finance Secretary has had with NHS 5 regarding the revised infrastructure investment pipeline.
Minister.
The importance of health infrastructure was a key consideration within the 2025-26 budget setting process. Additional capital investment of £139 million will support improvements across the NHS estate, providing increased core capital funding for NHS boards, as well as funding to support boards' priority areas for infrastructure investment. The Scottish Government is working closely with all NHS boards, including NHS 5, to develop a whole system NHS infrastructure plan. This will consider health infrastructure needs for the whole of Scotland to inform allocation of funding. This approach supports continued safe operation of existing facilities, as well as determination of longer-term investment priorities.
Annabel Ewing.
I thank the Minister for his answer. He may not, in fact, be aware that Fife Council has just granted planning permission for the new medical centre for Lochgelly. So, with clear support from NHS 5 and from the local community, with recognition by the Scottish Government that the current site is not fit for purpose, and with planning permission in place, will the Scottish Government now fulfil the promise it made way back in 2011 to deliver a new medical centre for Lochgelly?
Minister.
As we announced in the Scottish Budget, there is obviously continued challenge and uncertainty in the capital funding position, but that, combined with the reductions in our capital funding we've seen in recent years, means we cannot afford to all of our capital commitments or all projects we might wish to commit to. The member is right that Lochgelly Medical Centre was not included within the infrastructure investment plan from 2021-22 to 25-26, which identified the priority health capital projects for funding within that period. However, the infrastructure investment plan pipeline going forward beyond that period will be reviewed following the UK spending review, and all due consideration, of course, will be given to what projects can be included within that revised pipeline, including the Lochgelly facility that the member raises.
Thank you. Number supplementaries. First, Liz Smith.
Thank you. Annabel Ewing is quite right to raise this issue because it's extremely important. Would the Minister also agree that the provision of services for out of hours in St Andrews, which has been under very considerable pressures, is another one that is deserving of government attention to ensure that widespread use is continued?
Minister.
Well, as I've indicated, the process we have in place, Health Boards will identify their local priorities, and those will be considered as part of that overall whole systems NHS infrastructure plan. And I'm sure the requirement that Liz Smith identifies in St Andrews will get due consideration as part of that process.
And Willie Rennie.
Stratheden Hospital near Cooper provides mental health services, but it's housed in a Victorian building. It's got inadequate services, not sufficient room, lack of privacy. There's not enough space for therapeutic services. The Mental Welfare Commission have been very critical of its facilities. So will the Minister consider Stratheden Hospital in his consideration of the infrastructure plan?
Minister.
I thank the member for raising the situation in that locality. In addition to others that have been raised, and of course I've indicated the process will absolutely give due consideration to all of those priorities as part of that process, as that whole systems NHS infrastructure plan is pulled together and the infrastructure investment plan pipeline is reviewed, as indeed any other members that were going to raise any other specific asks for funding and any other supplementary questions this afternoon. Thank you.
And right on cue, Michael Mara.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. I mean, the Minister will recognise the frustration around the Chamber in terms of the number of projects that they want to see. But this infrastructure investment pipeline is something of a holy grail for the Government. Fabled, never found, really difficult to determine where it might be. We expected it with the budget in December 2023. It never came. We were told we'd have to wait till after the spring budget in March 2024. It never came. Next, the Finance Secretary said it would come with the medium-term financial strategy in May 2024. It never arrived. Can we have a commitment today from the Finance Minister it will come before summer recess?
Minister.
Well, the Cabinet Secretary will have indicated the timing on bringing forward of that plan, but the member needs to recognise, of course, that the certainty that we require from the UK spending review is hugely important, so that we've got clarity on what funds are available to support projects that would seek to be included within that infrastructure investment plan. Without that certainty, we're unable, of course, to take forward that plan.
Thank you. Question 5, Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what factors it considered when determining not to introduce any new tax bans or increase the rates of Scottish income tax for the remainder of this parliamentary session.
Minister.
As part of our recently published tax strategy, we engaged with 65 different organisations across Scotland, including businesses, think tanks, academics, civil society groups and tax professionals. And after listening to the views of these stakeholders, we are providing a period of stability on income tax for the lifetime of this Parliament. This will provide businesses with the confidence to invest in Scotland, supporting our economic growth priorities. Stakeholders have praised this approach, welcoming the opportunity to contribute to the development of our tax strategy, and we will continue with this engagement as we implement the strategy.
Craig Hoy.
Speaking last year, the Deputy First Minister, Kate Forbes, warned that the nature of tax policy in a devolved context is that it is very easy for people to move. Despite this warning, the SNP continues to increase tax by stealth by freezing the thresholds in the upper bands, meaning more Scots are paying higher marginal rates of tax in what is already the highest tax part of the UK. Scots also have to contend with the complexity and compliance costs of income tax rates of 19, 20, 21, 42, 45 and 48%. So if the Minister won't join us in our common-sense crusade to cut tax, isn't it time that he tackled the complexity of the SNP's high tax regime by reducing the overall number of Scottish tax rates and Scottish tax bands?
Minister.
Well, the reality is that common sense dictates that the Conservatives' plans to reduce tax rates would result in up to £1 billion less for the Scottish Government to spend on public services, and he should square that away with the asks in the previous question from members on his benches for more investment in public services across the country. The reality is that we watch this very closely in terms of behavioural impact. More people continue to move across all tax bands to Scotland from the rest of the UK than move in the other direction, and Scotland's tax strategy and our tax policy adopted so far raise significant additional funds to invest in our public services. And it's those that additional investment in public services, in fact, that is one of the reasons why more people continue to move to Scotland from the rest of the UK than move in the opposite direction.
Thank you. Question 6 was not lodged. Question 7 has been withdrawn. Question 8, Alec Rowley.
Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the Accounts Commission report, Local Government in Scotland Financial Bulletin 23-24, which was published on the 20th of January 2025.
Minister. Before I ask the Minister to respond, can we have a little less chatter on certain benches? Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome the Account Commission's independent confirmation that the local government settlement increased in real terms in both 2024-25 and again in 25-26. And I also share the Commission's view that transformation of frontline services must be progressed at pace by all public bodies, including, of course, local authorities, and that any transformation must be taken forward in partnership with local communities.
Alec Rowley.
Does the Minister accept that despite the increases of funding going into local government, this report paints a pretty bleak future for the finances of local government? But specifically, can I draw his attention to Fife Health and Social Care Partnership, which is currently projecting an overspend of £34.8 million and are looking at a number of horrendous proposals that will impact on the poorest, the elderly and the most vulnerable in Fife. Now, if they don't achieve that, NHS Fife and Fife Council will have to meet this overspend. Will the Minister agree to look again at the base budget of Fife Health and Social Care Partnership, which is clearly inadequate in terms of meeting the needs of the people of Fife?
Minister.
Well, the funds for local health and social care partnerships are, of course, determined by local partners and the funding for local government through the COSLA formula. But you should recognise what the Audit Commission said in regard to local government funding, that the 24-25 settlement was a real terms increase, and the 25-26 draft settlement published in December 2024 indicates another real terms uplift in funding for councils, and that this initial 25-26 draft settlement allocates £15 billion of revenue and capital funding to councils, a 5% real terms increase on the 24-25 draft settlement. Direct quotes from the Audit Commission report.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes portfolio questions on finance and local government. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item of business to allow front benches to change.